Hey.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Good. Kevin, cool. Okay. We're going to give it just a minute since today's the first day. Getting back rolling. Make sure that I share the right thing.
Yeah, I FaceTime probably twice a month with my like 5 of my friends, you know, and the one always posted.
Okay. Something else. Oh, what it is.
Yeah, and they have their .com is on San Francisco for now. They're going to build a new campus. I mean, it's a small town. It's crazy, like the housing. There's this pictures of Fabulous on HGTV.
Yes.
So downtown Bentonville, you can buy a house there for like $60,000 to $80,000. In 2008, those houses are now going for like $500,000. I mean,
So Karen, have you ever been to the equestrian center up near Tryon, North Carolina? Okay, yeah, we do a lot of riding. We do a lot of cycling up there.
Oh, you do?
and it's just
Yeah,
a
they have
square.
shows there now,
And
and
then downtown Rockland.
you know they've canceled a bunch of more shows.
Yeah, we do a bunch of bike races up there. They've all gotten canceled.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they pack you into a big ball of 500 people before you start. So there's no chance of that. We're hoping that some of them will come back in. I think we were looking for one, and we're doing our own little trip in August. That's just a couple of guys riding together. And then there's a big one we do in September in North Georgia. So hopefully they'll have that. We'll see. Yeah. Is it right in Tryon, or is it near Saluda, or? Yeah. Oh no, it's hot. Yeah. What caused you to move here? Okay. Ah, yeah. Got it.
My daughter was a competitive rider as a child. Oh, yeah. So we used to have to come down to Wellington all the time. But now I see they're building a huge center in Ocala. Yeah, we're yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's gonna be great. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that's how I heard.
To start things off, for those of you who don't know, and I'll send something out today. I rented a theater for us to watch this Thursday night.
School and become a badass. That's what he wants to do with the rest of his life. Yes, it is.
That's what you're saying.
Down syndrome has no idea how to get along with this food. Just slip out from under your nose. You two are close.
We are.
Well, then you figure out where he's at and bring him back. Are you following me?
Maybe we could be friends and buddies, bros all. Chill, have a good time.
You see the wrestling schools today?
Yes.
One long road leads all the way down. Drop the other.
I'm looking for a missing person. Have you seen him?
Oh, man on the lamb.
And Joker back there, Eleanor. Too bad it's on the road. Oh, yeah.
Number one, don't slow me down. Number two, I'm in charge. Hey, what's rule number one?
Party.
No, not party.
You won't be young boy with Down syndrome in the middle of nowhere.
All right, well, you've been doing paperwork. You've been doing something all day. Oh, man.
I'm going to give you all of my wishes.
I made a promise to him. Give that rest of the school name.
No, we're not gonna hop on your little raft and cruise around down the river.
Hey, Eleanor, I don't want to go home.
Oh. So how far is it?
Not that far, no.
Are your fingers to skin?
Yep.
I think it's time for us to go back now.
We could be a family.
Friends. Rest has got alter ego. You need a name.
I don't get peanut butter burger.
So on Thursday, for those of you who don't know, the Sunray Theater is down in the Five Points area. So they have a theater. They have a concession stand, beer, food, all those different things. I think the theater that we're using seats either 100 or 200, and they have it cut to 50. I'm going to keep it down to 30, 35, just for social distancing purposes, just to make sure everybody has tons of room. It's a big theater, but would rather, have everybody spread out pretty good. But it's all taken care of for you guys. So, if you want to come out and have a beer and watch the movie, it's a great, good time for uplifting stuff, in my opinion. So that's why. And then it's, it's helpful to the business. Essentially what you're doing is renting the space, and then you provide your own movie, and they're renting the space and providing concessions essentially, but it's a, beer garden style theater. So, they have beer and wine and food that's actually pretty good. 7:15 on Thursday. And Thursday's the 9th, right? I believe. Yeah. And then they have some rules that I'll get out to everybody as far as they don't want anybody showing up more than 15 minutes early, masks everywhere until you're inside the theater when you're eating or drinking or whatever. And they say you don't have to wear them inside the theater. And then, we just have to leave 15 minutes after. They have to make all those rules because typically that place is a hangout. So people that aren't used to it, or that are used to it, typically show up an hour early or hour and a half early, have a couple drinks, a little food and all that stuff. So they're cutting that part of it out, which makes absolute sense to me. So I'll get the invite out later today, and I'll put it on our Facebook page, and you'll get an email and all that stuff. So we'd love to have you come out there if you can. Obviously, things have tightened up just a little bit because we've got, a decent spike in the cooties in our area. So it's interesting, just to throw this out there. I constantly am checking myself because I come into contact with a lot of people. Like I'm always checking with my daughter, or if she's been around anybody I've been around anybody. And then I think it was about 3 weeks ago, my daughter is a competitive swimmer, and one of her teammates' siblings got it. So there was a sibling that got it, then a girl that swam on the team who was, lanes over from my daughter. And then my daughter lives in my house. So we went and got checked because we were going out of town and we were leaving our soon to be 17-year-old daughter at home. And I was like, well, if we're going to leave her at home, we should just go and get tested. So Rachel and I went and got tested. 2 weeks ago Monday, because we have a really cool doctor setup. It came back, within 2 days, and both of us were negative. But periodically, once I did that, I was like, periodically, I'll probably just get tested just because I'm in touch with so many people. You guys, I'm usually like, this is about as close as I want to get to anybody without a mask, and that's just a personal thing, because I don't want to give it to anybody. That's just my thought process. Anybody can deal with it however they feel best. Okay, so a couple of things that I wanted to throw out there. You don't need to know how to do this yet. I'm going to put a little something together for all of us to be able to share out to the world related to what's going on with our real estate market specifically. So I'm going to go into this a little before we go into the intro. And you don't need to, I'm not teaching you how to do this right now, but I want to show you a little bit of the info that I saw that I thought was interesting. My wife and I are both in my, oops, I walked away from my computer. Trying to make Zoom as available as possible. So this is way back. Okay, let me go ahead and customize this. I thought I had a saved search in here, but apparently I didn't. Make sure I'm logged in as me. Yes, not my wife. And last month was June. I think there's a little value in knowing this information. That's where I was checking my work, going way back into 2014, 2015, and 2016, comparing it to where we are now. Okay. So just to give you an idea of what this is. So I did a search up here for residential property, and this is our entire MLS. So I didn't break it down by area or anything else. This is just our Northeast Florida market as a whole. And we have an interesting thing that could be an opportunity if it's presented the right way for any and all of us. We have the lowest inventory I think we've had since I've been in real estate. So if I look at this in June 2020 right here, we had 8,200 listings on the market, which is low. If you look at a year before, we had 97. So it's 1,500 listings less. Then we had almost the same number of listings come on the market, and we only had a few less sold. So this number, 2.76 months of inventory, is for our market as a whole. I always joke around that this is a government number. It's government math, because what months of inventory means is if we didn't put anything else on the market, it would take 2.76 months for the inventory to go to zero. An easier way to look at it is it's just the number of active listings divided by the number of sold listings gives that months of inventory. That's the lowest months of inventory that I could find. I went back, I started in 2003. I went back past that for the first real estate bubble. And we had less houses then, and I couldn't find a months of inventory that low. So with that being said, people who should sell their house right now, so I'll say it to you 1,000 times over, we sell houses, not deals. We're not wheelie dealy deal makers, we're house makers, home makers. We help people buy a home that they're gonna live in. That's because I know that your house is not an investment. So I know some people's gears grind to a halt when I say that. I'd be more than willing to argue the point with anybody, and I'll argue with the point by saying the only way you can use the money from your house is if you borrow against your house, and then you have to pay yourself back, or you sell your house, in which case you have to go buy another place to live. So your house isn't an investment. It's not. It's a roof over your head. The amount of money you want to spend on it is totally a personal thing. I'm a cheapskate on mine to a certain extent, but I have the typical little concrete block 1954 beach house, but it's 4 blocks to the ocean. I'm totally fine with it that way. But the people that should sell now, if they have to sell to buy, move down or downsizers or anything like that, fantastic time to do that, because if you're moving down from a $450,000 house to a $250,000 or $300,000 house, the ratio works out good. So if you're a downsizer, and then anybody who has a second home or something that they don't use, or they left it behind as a rental back when the market was difficult. So even up to about 8 years ago, people couldn't sell, if they bought a house in 2004, they couldn't sell it in 2012 and get back the money that they put into it. In fact, they were most likely pretty far upside down still in 2012. So what a lot of people did is they rented that house because they didn't have the money to sell it, to bring to closing to sell it. So they rented that house. This is probably the prime time to get the most amount of money out of a house that you possibly could. The issue that I'm running into now on a relatively consistent basis, and it stings, is I've run into a couple of appraisal issues. So you can sell a house for what in a bank size is more than it's worth right now. So I've had 3 of them in the last couple of weeks, to where, the house is under contract at 240 and it appraises at 225. Depending on circumstance, most of the time the seller says, well, that's too bad for you. You could go try another lender, somebody that will appraise the property properly, or we can cancel this out, but I'm not coming down 15 grand, or you can bring the 15 grand and buy the house anyway. So it's a tough spot to be in for buyers, and a great spot to be in for sellers, as long as you present that information the right way. The fact that that you may sell the house for, in theory, more than it's worth. And then when that comes around, you might want to show some flexibility to whoever that buyer is. The script is, hey, it didn't appraise, but we squeezed every bit of money out of that property that we possibly could. That's typically how we frame that with a seller. And with buyers, half the time it was a multiple offer situation. And, obviously there are 3 or 4 buyers that want to buy it. One of them won, then the house doesn't appraise. So that's why I sometimes say it's the sales price of a house is not necessarily the market value. Well, that's the market value. The appraisal is not market value. Appraisals are not market value, particularly in a time like this. Oftentimes difficult to get things to appraise. So I'm just throwing that out there so you guys understand that, and will prepare your buyers when that stuff comes up. So just to give you, I always want to give people a little background on Rachel and I and how we got here. This is my 17th year. So I started in 2003, September of 2003. So I guess this is the end of my 16th year. My daughter was 8 weeks old when I started in September. So she's going to turn 17 in 8 days. My first year, I sold 19 houses for 4.6 million in volume. Where did those come from? Almost all of them were sphere of influence, and then I did quite a few open houses. So I believe 6 of them that year came from open houses. Pretty much the rest of it came from friends or family, or referrals from friends and family, and we're going to talk about that more today. My wife started with me the following year. So she was in advertising sales at that time. But she wanted to keep our insurance and all those things for the first year, having a little one. So I totally got it. Not really. was like, you're crazy to be doing this job that you're doing versus what I'm doing. This is the best job in the world. I think the year before we came here, and that's why we came here, we sold just a little over $12 million in real estate that year. And then we realized with our old company that we paid them essentially $77,000 more than if we had been here, because they treated Rachel and I as individual agents. We're here, we're one entity. So that cap that we talk about, the $20,000, the $3,000 that's royalty to Keller Williams International, and the $20,000 that goes to the office, you add those together, that's your cap. Rachel and I, since we're married, are a single cap. Like if I left, you know, she's not staying, and vice versa. So we've done a little over 12 million before. The worst year, I think, was 2011. It was either 11 or 12. We sold less than 6 million, which is rare. That's a big dive for us. A little bit about the business philosophy. So just to give you some background, we have a couple rules we run on. Number one rule, and that's why I'm actually here with you guys, is with competence comes confidence. So the majority of real estate training and coaching isn't based on how to do a great job on your job. I call it malarkey or baloney or whatever you want, where they say, you know, just go to your office from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. every day and get on the phone and make a bunch of phone calls to all different people all over the place. But they're not concerned on how well, or not necessarily, because they're like, get a client, get a contract, and we'll get it closed. And that whole philosophy drives me crazy because it's low quality work that gets done. So Rachel and I, our entire business after all this time is 100% database, sphere of influence based. So we'll sell somewhere around 32 houses this year, 32. And of those 32, this year, probably 100% of them will be friends, family, past customer, or referrals from friends, family, past customer. Because I'm doing this, I don't do open houses, and Rachel doesn't have to, and she doesn't like them, and she's not good at it, which is really strange. Her personality, if you ever get a chance to meet her, is way more cut out for open houses than mine. But for some reason, she's just never been comfortable or successful with it, and I was. So, and then sometimes we come up with different plans that we'll throw in, but the different plan is for me to do this because I love doing it. I actually get in trouble on a regular basis. So you would be an example of this when, so Blake has a really cool property under contract right now. Is my wife has had 2 closings on Thursday. Yeah, 2 closings this past Thursday. And I'm always like, oh, that's awesome. Congratulations. Put them in the little thing, throw the check in, do X, Y, and Z. But when one of you guys gets a contract, I start barking, oh, yeah, you know, I'm doing cartwheels all over the living room. And yeah, there's a substantial money difference. And when she does a transaction and when you do, it's not really about the money. I just get really fired up. It makes my day when somebody gets their first contract. We also use the KISS rule, keep it simple, stupid. We're big into that. Work smarter before harder is another big rule. And there's some others that'll pop up along the way here. So want to give you a little bit of what we got going on. So this is the first thing you need to know, this KWJB futurecappers.com website. So this is a website that I created that's sort of a clearinghouse for all of our stuff. Oh, I think I already opened it in this tab. Let me see. Nope, I'll just pull it from here. So I'll give you a little background on what this is. Internet seems unusually slow in here today. Okay. So on this first homepage, just the kwcappers.com, you'll see that I'll have the calendars up. So this has the July calendar for training. You can click that button and see what we're doing when. For example, today, I think we'll be done around 11:30, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later, depending on circumstance. So I tried to put the times in on mine. So this is the introduction. On Wednesday, you'll have Megan dealing with the command database, which we're going to talk about some today. The next day, we're going to go, or on Thursday, database and database prospecting will be our discussion. Then a week from today on Monday will be how you get paid for the most part, opportunities in DocuSign. And then we'll go into the contract class on Wednesday. So I'll be giving you some homework in preparation for that this coming Thursday. So this just has the calendar and the things that we're going to go over in the class. And that's on the first page of the website. The agent toolbox. And I have a couple of these to update. But here's a quick example. So what Rachel and I have done that we've had success with over the years, all I've done is taken the things that we did and taken our logos, our branding, all that stuff off it, and changed it to Keller Williams Atlantic Partners and give it to you and teach you how to use it. So the same things that cause, let me see if this will pop up real quick. Let me see, I probably have one not too far away. Let's go here. This will probably do it. So this is sort of a year in the life of the Dorian Home Team. So we came over here and started working here in October of 2009. So actually October 2010, I think. So we've been here for 10 years. Your first full month with the company is your anniversary date. So because we came over in October, our anniversary date or our fiscal year with Keller Williams with the office is November 1st. So you'll see like this one actually closed on November 1st. So sorry about that. That particular year, we sold a grand total of 38 properties. It started at 3 and goes to 41. That's an above average year for us. About $10.5 million. We average almost 3% for our side of the business. Like our listings, sometimes we get a little bit of a bonus on. Our gross commission income, so what came into Keller Williams Realty Atlantic Partners was about $305,000 that year. These were referral fees paid out to agents that sent us business from like Ocala or somewhere else. And sometimes it's agents that went into the referral network here because real estate didn't work out for them and they went and took a job, but they stay in the referral network. This is the 3,000 that's the Keller Williams International. This is the cap to the office, essentially, the 20,000. We call this concession or cost of doing business. Every once in a while to get a transaction to go through, you'll end up buying a home warranty to bring something together or to get rid of a repair issue or whatever. And then this was our net before expenses of around 276, almost 277,000 if you round it up. So essentially what we do, no problem. So we'll take, we just took the presentations and the systems that we use and took Dorian Home Team off and put Keller Williams Atlantic Partners on. As an example, it's Maria, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and we'll talk about this in a minute. So Maria, thanks for showing me your house and explaining to me your unique set of selling circumstances. What I'd like to do now is take about 15 minutes and show you exactly what we're going to do in terms of marketing to get the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time for your home. Does that make sense? Okay. So the first thing that we do with every single listing that we get is we hire a professional photographer. That's because we know a picture is worth 1,000 words. We also know that people, almost 100%, it's about 98% of people, go to the internet when they start their home search. So they go there before they call an agent, before they call a mortgage company. That's the first step. That's the fun part. So what we need to do is show your house in its absolute best light on the internet. So the photographer we use doesn't shoot, pictures of babies or pets. All he does is homes. He's dedicated to making homes look absolutely, in their absolute best light. That would be the way to say it. It's his sole focus. So what we want to do is hire him, make sure we get the perfect photos done for your house. And then we're going to build our marketing plan from there. Okay. So first and foremost, I get it. Not many people's kitchens look like this. I can tell you mine's pretty far from it. This kitchen, you can see everything has its place. It's really well organized. There's not a lot of clutter. It's just presented in its absolute best light. I can tell you my kitchen looks a little closer to this because I have a daughter, 17-year-old daughter. Although she's not doing crown paintings anymore, we do have a lot of pictures around. In reality, this kitchen could look pretty good. It has a decent tile floor on an offset pattern. It has granite countertops, maple cabinets, stainless steel appliances, but you can't see all that stuff because of the over-personalization and all the clutter. So we can help you get as close to this as we possibly can and as far from this as we possibly can. Does that make sense? So another example, formal living room, everything has its place, nice and organized. There's a couple of pictures on the wall, but it's not overly personalized. What we want to do is avoid stuff like this. So this could just be an outright turn off for a large contingent of the population, and we really don't want to do that. My recommendation to this seller would be to take, the dead animals off the wall and put them into storage so that they can actually see, what that room looks like. Does that make sense? So again, this is the difference between an average picture and then a great picture. So what we're going to do after we get those pictures. Okay, so here's all I'm doing is demonstrating you exactly what you'll learn and then exactly the tools that you'll use. So one of the biggest problems that agents have is they try to redo everything every time they get a listing opportunity. Every time they work with a buyer, they generally just don't do that right. We have systems in place that make it so you don't have to have 100 people or 200 people or sit there on the phone calling people you don't know. What we do is we work with the people we know. We do it at such a high level and provide such great service using these techniques that they refer us left and right. So that's how you end up in a position to where, you're selling on average 32 homes a year at a decent price point. And that's what I'm looking to help you guys with. We have this is just step-by-step, the home buying process. So one of the classes will be your total buyer's consult. We'll go through all this in detail, how to use this. So it just has a script with it that hopefully will keep you out of trouble. And it's funny, I've had a couple of agents recently that didn't go through this, and it's crystal clear to me. They'll get contacted by somebody in their sphere that says, hey, I have this house, I'm really interested, I want to buy it. And they go show them the house. And they skip this part. And then when the home inspection happens, they're totally unprepared to explain to them that in the current market, in the current place, they're probably not asking for a whole lot of repairs, and they're probably not getting a whole lot done because it's such a heavy seller's market. So we go through all the scripts that'll help you during this time. So those are the examples of some of the things that are found on the agent toolbox. I have a few videos out here as well, and you're welcome to go ahead and look at them. This was a open house Zoom that I did a little while back. This is a database class, a contract to close class. Contract to close is actually where I see the majority of issues with people, and it's not something that they teach very well in real estate training or coaching. They just glance over that. I can tell you when Rachel and I moved over here, I do think it was 2009. So we moved over here in 2009. We had been working since 2003. I'd never had a fully executed contract not go to closing. So that's another one of our rules. The more contracts you write for a buyer, the less chance you have of getting paid. It means that you in their eyes, you're screwing up. You can't get what they want. It doesn't matter if what they want doesn't make sense. For example, $300,000 house, they want to offer $250,000. Nobody can get them what they want if you didn't set that right expectation, because that's not going to happen in our market. So contract to close is probably the most important part. On the downloads tab here, you'll find a whole bunch of different things. One of the most important ones is right here, the Keller Williams Command Contacts database import. So this is where you can start loading in your buyers and sellers. This is the spot to do that. This is the top 2,000 agents in NEFAR, which if you hadn't sold the house right away, we would have sent out an e-card to the top 2,000 agents, but we marketed it right and priced it right, so all gone. Couple things we'll go over, just review a little bit, is a marketing plan for 12 months, hourly plan. I have Keller Williams Atlantic Partners logos here if you need them. We're going to go over this MREA spreadsheet a little bit. A marketing calendar, contract to close checklist. I have a bunch of the tools that we use and teach already loaded up here for you. The next tab is the one-to-one sign up. So what'll happen is I will direct you to here for us to do a one-to-one meeting. So for example, I think I sent it to you. Grab one whenever you get a chance if you want to do that meeting. I have you later today and then Miles later today as well. I have some openings tomorrow morning. Then I have one Friday, and then the rest of the month is fairly open. So if you click on the, I accidentally closed it. If you click on that tab, the one-to-one sign up tab, it'll bring you to a place where we can set up a one-to-one meeting to work on things together. And then my contact info is over here, which luckily to this point, I haven't gotten overwhelmed by scammers and people dialing me up. I'm leaving it out there for now. I may have to turn that into a report system later. So just wanted to make sure you knew what that website was, and I'm constantly adding and changing things to that for us all to use. And it does have, I just showed you the pre-listing, listing, presentation info, buyer's consultation, or contract to close infos out there. There's some videos, downloads, a place for you to set up meetings, and then the training calendar is on that front page. So I already went over a little bit on this training calendar. Probably the most important thing that I want, or one of the most important things for today, the initial contact script. If by chance you run into a listing opportunity and we haven't done the listing class yet, this is the one. This is how we deal with our listings just about 100% of the time. So let me pull this up for the people at home to be able to see it. I forget to do that sometimes. It is this guy. Okay. Let me make sure that's being shared properly for them to see. Screen share. Okay. And then let's go ahead and show this thing. Might be jumping around a little bit. Does everybody see that initial contact script listing appointment? So here's the way that we deal with this. 100% of the time, the Dorian home team, and therefore you, if you want my help, will do your listing appointments in 2 steps. So there's an initial contact script. So you'll get a referral, friend, family will most likely be how you end up with a listing appointment, but it could come from doing an open house. So the basic script is, you'll talk to whoever it is on the phone, say, hey, just want to let you know, our listing process is done in 2 steps. During the first step, we're going to meet with you to see the property, to learn about your unique set of selling circumstances. Additionally, we're going to show you exactly what we do in terms of marketing to get the property sold. Then during the second step, we'll be reviewing your custom marketing plan and pricing strategy, as well as the paperwork necessary to get your home sold for the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time. So when we go through this class, I'll explain all the reasoning behind that, but that's the basic script. And the reason that I want you to know that is listings are generally not an emergency. It's not like when you have a buyer. With a listing, it usually is a process that takes about 2 weeks to get that thing up on the market and launched, and the pictures and all the different parts of it. So that it's usually not a super time sensitive thing. So when you do this, what we're trying to do is you're going to be my eyes on the property, and you're going to get, I call it the marketing baloney out of the way. And then what happens is we set up a meeting. We go over, what the person's unique set of selling circumstances are. And we do the CMA together. We'll always do the competitive market analysis together. And then I'll give you the steps on presenting that market analysis to make 100% sure that you get buy-in without too much negotiating. Generally, we don't negotiate the list price of a house very much, if any. The reason that's the case is we can usually do a CMA that you could explain to a first grader. So it's usually pretty simple, but we also know that that oftentimes it's not what somebody had wanted or hoped for. So we have to have an answer to any possible question that they might have about that CMA. So we work together to make sure that happens for you. The reason we don't negotiate the purchase or the list price very much is because we don't control it. Who controls the list price? Anybody? The market. The market. Seller doesn't, buyer doesn't, listing agent doesn't, buyer's agent doesn't. It's the market that controls the value of a property. So there's no point if, we have a clear path and map to what the price is for negotiating that very much. To a certain extent, you may take a small gamble. That'll be your business decision, and we'll talk about how you could possibly go ahead and do that. Okay, so that's what you should do if you have a listing opportunity and you want my assistance. If you don't want my assistance, don't set it up as a 2-step. And we'll be sure you don't get any assistance. That's the best way to assure that you're not going to get assistance. So individual meetings. So come prepared with specific items to discuss. So one of the things we'll talk about is what your goals are. We're going to talk a little about that today. Where you think you're going to get your business from. We create a 1-page business plan. It's called a 135. That'll have your business sources on it. We'll talk about, it's called the MREA spreadsheet. That stands for Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And we're going to talk a little bit about goal setting today. We're going to talk about when you're going to do your job and what your plans are to get customers, buyers and sellers, clients. We may do a little discussion of your pipeline report, your time blocking, and then your consultations / presentations. We'll go through that info. So a couple things about your expectations. Are you guys seeing, probably not seeing my desktop right now. Let me make sure I screw these shares up relatively often. I'm out of practice because I'm out of practice because we were sort of gliding away from Zoom, and now we're sort of ramping Zoom back up, which is no friggin' fun, but it is what it is. So expectations, just to let everybody know, this is the scariest part for people. First of all, when you got your real estate license, it's not on a big, gigantic piece of wood with, bright lights. In other words, it wasn't a sign that you put in front of a store, a brick and mortar retail store where people are going to come in. That's not what a license is. And a lot of people treat it like that's what the license is. Like, oh, I have a license. That means I'm, they think people are just going to walk in the door. It doesn't happen that way. So we have to be purposeful and not rest on what we're about to talk about expectation-wise. First of all, from the minute you get a contract, a fully executed contract, on average, it's going to take about 45 days to close. Might be 35, might be 45, but it's going to take about that long to close. So what you add to that, when you get a bona fide buyer or seller, how long will it take to find the right home and get it under contract? So how long does it take from when you start showing homes to putting it under contract? Let's say it's 30 days. Now it's 30 days plus 45 days before you get paid. Then how long will it take for you to get a ready, willing, able buyer or seller? We go through those classes, either the listing class or the buyer class. We'll talk about what qualifies somebody as ready, willing, and able. So we'll talk about that. I have 2 willings in there. It's probably not a bad idea. We want them to be extra willing. So if it takes you 45 days to find a ready, willing, and able buyer or seller, you take that 45 days, you add the 35 days to find a class, you're at 75 days, and then you add the 45 days to closing, and now you haven't been paid for 120 days. That's a typical cycle, is 100 to 120 days from when you meet somebody to when you get paid. So a lot of people don't understand that time commitment on the upfront. So just a couple of NAR stats, that's National Association of Realtor stats for new agents. Out of business the first year, it's about 50% are done by the end of the first year. By the end of the second year, it's about 75%. And then by the end of the third year, it's about 85% are gone. Our numbers are way better than that, but that's the numbers that we see. So the stats that I have below that are stats from when the first year that I previously was the productivity coach. So I was the coach from the end of 2014 through 2015, 16, and 17. But I was the productivity coach for this office, the Southside office, the Amelia Island office, and the St. Augustine office. So when I stopped doing it, I had 89 people in the program, and it was just a lot of work. And I didn't have to do it. And sometimes politics gets in the way. So I decided not to do it for a period of time. And I'm back now and loving it. So in our first year, I probably had about 100 people, maybe a little bit more, go through the program, and we had 10 cappers. So 10 people that paid all their cap and then made more money. So about 1 in 10 people would cap in their first year, which is a little rough. Now that, you know, the program that I have has about 30 people, you know, a third of the people in it, we can spend more time and energy and raise that number up. We did have 3 that year that did over 100,000 in gross commission income. So that was good. But then you look at it, that's 3%. I'm not really too happy about that. But it's not totally undifferent from those agents on the wall or real estate as a whole. Has anybody ever heard of the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule? So it's a Italian, I don't know if I'd say philosopher, because he was a scientist, but he came up with this rule they call the Pareto principle. 80% of the wealth in those times was held by 20% of the people. 80% of the land, 80% of the livestock. And then we know in real estate that 20% of the agents do 80% of the business. It's actually a little worse than that. It's probably that if you look at year 3 there, 85, it's probably 85-15, where 15% of the agents do 85% of the transactions. So it's not the easiest thing to do in the world, but it is what it is. Let me see, is there something else? There's something sort of weighing on my mind on that. Nah, we'll move it on. Okay, so you'll hear people talk about capping all the time because that's the primary indicator of success. I'm gonna grab a pencil so I can write stuff down while I do this. I have to go with a pen. It means I'm not allowed to make a mistake. Okay, so first things first, the approximate volume to cap. In other words, what you would have to sell in millions of dollars. I'm going to pull up. It looks funny, but there it is, the calculator. So if you sell $2.5 million in real estate, right? So we do 2.5 million. So I'll just write that down. So 2.5 million, and your average commission split on your side, I'm going to do it. The average is probably 2.75. We're going to use 2.85 because on our listings, generally speaking, we're going to get a full commission on our side, which is 3%. Because all that stuff that I started showing you in that presentation, you're paying for that out of pocket. So, so I'm going to say 2.5 million times 0.0285 equals. So that's 71,250. Okay. So for just going back to that spreadsheet that I used to show you what Rachel and I do, that's what this number is. When you say gross commission income, that's what comes into the Keller Williams office. So if you do 2.5 million at 2.85%, it's 71,250. Just shortly before this point, at about 66,000 GCI, you've paid off that cap, the 23,000. So from here, I could just subtract 23,000. And it comes out to 48,250. And then from there, you will have had the pleasure of paying your expenses for whatever generated that business. So your real estate license, the gas for your car maintenance, signs, photos for listings, all that stuff that you're paying for. And let's say that we used $8,250 out of that. So you made about 40 grand. And that you'd be lucky to squeeze 40 grand out of that set of circumstances, but you might be able to. So that's what we're talking about when we're capping. Okay. So I want to throw another little something at you. What if we double our cap? So let's say we sell 5 million. And we'll use that times 0.0285. We're at 142.5. And then from there, we'll subtract that 23,000, which is your cap. We're at 119.5. And out of there, your expenses are probably going to be 20K, and you're basically then at 99,500. That's what you'd be looking to do. So hopefully that would be like what your 1099 looked like. Does that make sense? Everybody sort of understand what we're getting at there? And the reason I go through that, you know, it's to set expectations. It's also to, you know, let you know that the awesome part about real estate is that it's a fairly low barrier of entry. You don't have to have any special college degree or a year-long training or a big mentorship thing. I mean, it's a pretty low barrier of entry to get in. So that means that anybody can succeed and have a great life based on a real estate business. But it also means, you know, when we look at that 85% being gone in 3 years, that not many people, everybody can, not many people will. So our goal is to make a business plan to make sure that all works out well for you. Okay, so moving on from there, we talked about the approximate volume to cap. After you cap, what's next? What if you double the cap? I always like to talk to people about their hourly rate because I think it puts into pretty deep contrast. So I'm going to go through this and take out the 20,000 down to that 99.5 that I talked about. So if you wanted that would be your 1099 at the end of the year, essentially. Well, the 119.5 would be, but then you would subtract your expenses from that. So let's say you wanted to have that 99.5 on your 1099. Let's just use that as a number. If we're going to work, let's say on average, 45 hours a week. And then we're going to work, there's 52 weeks in a year. Let's say that we're going to work 45 of them. That's your hourly rate. You're $49 an hour. My goal in showing you that is you need to learn when to turn things on and turn things off. It's the biggest mistake that agents make is they think they're working all the time. And most of the time what I've found is they think about the things that they're supposed to be doing that they're not doing. And that pressure is building and the anxiety is building and it feels like work carrying the weight of not doing your job. And then all of a sudden they think they're working 80 hours a week and that work is so low quality that, you know, what are they really working? 20, 15, 25? So what we want to do is know the truth about these numbers. And that's something we're going to talk a little bit about today. The easiest way to do that, I wonder if I did that up here. Let me just look and see. Okay. Just want to check one thing. Yeah, I really should have this guy up here. One of the things that you can download from the Future Cappers website, it's called the MREA spreadsheet. So it's under downloads. Let me see what it's called on this one. MREA worksheet simple. So I'm going to show you how we're going to start building your business plan here. It'll come up here in a second. Whoop. It just hadn't downloaded yet, I don't think. Giving me trouble. Let's try that again. Until this little thing goes away, when it's scanning it, it doesn't let me open it. It's taking a long time today. So much for buying a new computer to speed things up. It's the internet issue, really, not a computer issue, but. All right, give me the go ahead. Come on. I can hear it grunting along. In theory, it should open now. Ah, and it does. It's a miracle, isn't it? I love my wife when something doesn't happen right away. She just keeps clicking the button over and over, just restarting everything. Opens up 7 windows of the same thing. It drives me crazy. And then I drive her crazy by going, I told you so. Told you stop doing that. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and throw in here a couple of numbers, and we're going to talk about how this thing works, because this is going to be the foundation for our business plan. So for some of you, you're in the official business planning class, which was Wednesday. Yeah, not last Wednesday, but the Wednesday before. So this is the part that you may or may not have seen. So this is when we're introducing this stuff. And then by the end of you seeing all the classes, hopefully we have this thing somewhat flushed out for you. So let's say that somebody wants to make $65,000. So this is your 1099. So this is your goal on a 1099 basis from checks you get from KW. The next thing is, this is how much you anticipate paying assistants, transaction coordinators, etc. For you guys, I'd highly recommend that number is 0. You need to know how to do all that stuff before you hire somebody to do it. I can't turn that stuff over to anybody. I don't turn over transaction coordination because contract to close for us using our plan is simple. We can close 30, 32 in a year without any difficulty. Why would I hand over, $350 30 times if I know how to do it and it's easy for me? Some people it's not easy for, so. The next number, so line 8 here, marketing gas, BOR stands for Board of Realtors, cell phone expenses, total annual expense for car, phone, signs, printing, marketing, etc. That should have a light bulb go off your head, over your head, that you're actually running a business. I would highly recommend that you open up, talk to a CPA and open up like an S Corp or whatever they tell you to do. You'll see when I get checks from you, they all say Patrick Dorian Inc. because that's I'm an independent contractor here, so that's how I get paid. And that's what allows you to track and write off without running into trouble from the IRS. Car, phone, signs, printing, marketing, etc. So I just have a different debit card for Patrick Dorian or Patrick T. Dorian Inc., which is my coaching. I have a separate debit card for we call it DHT Home, the Dorian Home Team, me and Rachel. And then we have our home account is separate from that. So at the end of the year, all I have to do is pull down the account statements and I can do my taxes relatively easy because we keep it pretty simple. Not necessarily. You can do it. I think it's about $400 when I got an accountant to do it. They might. So I would say, let's say that you spent 10 grand in expenses that year. Your commission requirement would need to be $75,000. So if you had the $75,000, you spent $10,000 on expenses, you'd end up with 65. See how that goes uphill? This whole sheet actually goes uphill. So the next thing that's here, that's your cap with Keller Williams is 23,000. That means that your gross commission income from closings needs to be 28 or 98. So this is the total commissions you must receive from closings. It's the sum of your income goal, everything else. So that 98 minus the 23 leads you to the 75 and then the 10 grand for expenses. And then you have $65,000 in income. Everybody see that? So let's on this one assume 0 to 8.5. So if you sell just a little shy of $3.5 million in real estate at an average of 2.85% on your side, you'll bring in 98 grand in GCI, 23 for your cap and royalty, put you at the 75. So that's how it builds up. Now, if your average sales price, let's say that it's 275. If your average sales price is 275, I'm going to raise it a little just to make that number prettier. See how much I have to raise it. Boom. Okay, so if your average sales price is 285, that means you need to sell 12 houses. So 12 times 285 will bring you in here approximately at that number. Everybody see how that goes up? So it's only 12 houses. Sounds easy, doesn't it? It does. It sounds super easy and attainable. It's not always, but it sounds that way. Okay, so here's what we need in terms of clients. So this is the percentage of your listing or buyers that eventually close a transaction. If you don't know your conversion rate, use 0.7. Why would they use, what is 0.7? That's average. That means there's people that close 0.5, half of them, and there's people that close all of them. That's a bad number. We don't want that number going on in here. That's a whole lot of work for you and me that we're not getting paid on. We want this number to be at least 80%. So if you close, this is what this means. To close the number of transactions you need, this is the number of listings or buyers you must work with. So that means you would have 15 combination of buyers or listings. You'd close 80% of them. That means you would get this 12. Does everybody see how that works? So the next one, this is the presentations appointments needed. This is the percentage of people that agree to work with you from your appointments. If you don't know your conversion rate, use 0.7. That's way too low. That's average. We're going to use 0.8. To hit your goal, this is the number of appointments you need to have. So you need to have 19 appointments this year. So if you have 19 appointments and 80% of those people agree to work with you, and you do 15 signed contracts of some point, and 80% of those close, it's 12 closings. See how that works? So let's say that you're going to work 45 weeks this year. That means you need 0.42 leads to meet your goal. Basically 1 every 2 weeks. So the way that we're going to come up with that, the way that's going to happen is you need to build a sphere of influence or a database, and then you need to feed that database. And then likely if you want to do some right now business or you know, put things into motion, then you want to do open houses. Is the most likely, least expensive, best path for a new agent. And we do have an open house class to help you guys with that. So here's a rule of thumb they're going to throw up here. If you get most of your business from your sphere, you'll hear sphere and database called the same thing. You need 72 people in it. During the database class, we'll show you exactly the way that Rachel and I do the 72 people. We have 186. The easiest way to look at that, how often do people move? About every 7 years, give or take a little. Back in 2003, 4, 5, and 6, it had gotten down to 4 or 5 years because people were just moving because money was free and you could go anywhere you wanted. And then it went up astronomically high to over 10 years that people were staying in their home. And the reason it went up astronomically high is because they, you know, in theory, if you bought a house in 2006 for $300,000 in this area, by 2009, it was worth about $210,000. So you lost 30% of the value, and most people didn't put 30% down. In fact, they put down 0, and they didn't have the 90 plus. Yeah, they didn't have, when it comes right down to it, the $117,000 to bring to closing to sell that house. So they just stayed in them or they rented them. So that's what that MREA spreadsheet is for. What we're going to do with that spreadsheet, let me find this, is up here where it says the goal. Are you guys seeing that, Taylor and Kevin? Okay. So where it says goal, essentially you're going to write in what we just figured out. And what we just figured out was that somebody wanted to make $65,000 by selling 12 houses at an average of $285K. Does that make sense? That's essentially the goal that'll go on that sheet. And as we go through the classes, we get tighter and tighter. Right now, we're only worried about your first priority. And your first priority is to build a database of 100 people. And the only way those people count, and this is going to be painful for anybody under the age of 30. I'm looking at you, Taylor, and you, Blake, although you did do it, right? Mostly. Don't worry, we'll check on you. The only way that those people count is if you have their phone number, their email address, here's the kicker, their physical mailing address. We need to have all those 3 things, or the formula that we're going to learn won't work. And you're welcome to try a different formula. I'm welcome. I'd be happy for it to work for you. I'd be happy for you to be the guinea pig for everybody else. But everybody I've seen skip the formula has not had great success, especially when they try to turn it into 3 emails a month or something along those lines. So your first priority is to grow that database to 100 people. Over time in the database class, we'll talk about the strategies of how we're going to do that. So that's just the introduction of what that thing is, the 135. We know that, you know, we can put in there what we want to make. And now we have to build the plan to follow on a day-to-day basis. Okay, we did that. Okay, so a couple of things that we need you to do. You should print out your training calendar, or at least know where it is. Want to make sure that you go through all the training at least one time through every class. But I honestly got to tell you, and this is probably going to get put into effect, talking about it this week, that people have to come to the classes until they have their database. If they don't have their database, they need to keep coming until they have their database. We'll find a way. So complete the MREA worksheet that I just showed you. I showed you where you can download that. I didn't go deep into the weekly hourly planner. Let me mention that real quick. So here's the deal with this thing. I'm a big fan of putting on here all the times I'm not going to work first. So for example, if you go to church on Sunday morning, and then you go to brunch afterward and you're done at 1 o'clock, you should print this out and block everything off to that point. Just block everything off from 7 a.m. from early in the morning till 1 o'clock that day. That's off limits. If you are, your daughter's volleyball coach and you have practice on Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 5 till 8 p.m., you should block that off and say I'm not available during those times for work. It's a scheduled appointment. I have a workout window that is a scheduled appointment that I won't miss. So I put that scheduled workout. My wife is amazing with it. She has, so Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, she works out every day. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, she works out. It's from 7 a.m. It's 6 to 7. So she does that Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Tuesdays and Thursdays, she does 9 to 10. And then Saturdays, she does 8, and Sundays, she does 9. And all that stuff's blocked off. It's time when you're not putting that aside to do real estate work. It's an appointment with yourself. If you eat dinner with your family every single night at 5 o'clock and it's over at 6:30, put that on there. You're going to be doing that. And then we need to look at what we're going to be doing over time is looking how to use that other space. The other space that's left after you put in your life requirements. And then that command template, just as a reminder, under downloads, it's the second thing, KWC, contacts import template. And when the little button went away, it shouldn't get grumpy at me for opening it. Okay, so this is the exact format that everything has to be in. So you'll want to fill that in. And again, the 3 required items are cell phone number, physical mailing address, and email address. And when we do that class, we're going to talk about how to get that information and how we're going to build that information. We're going to talk about strategies on, if you don't have a local database. I'm assuming you don't have one, Karen. Okay. And I know Denise doesn't. No. Okay. So that's the hardest thing in the world. But what we do is we build a plan on how to fill that up. Yours is, you are lucky. You might not know this, but you're part of a community in which you are a person of influence. So since you're involved in equestrian stuff and you're a person of influence, we should be able to do some things to build your database out of that community. And then also, that type of property is a niche property too. So there's multiple good things that could happen over time. And that's what we have to build. We talked about yours. You're strong on women's issues. We got to come up with what we're going to do with that. Yeah, and how we're going to make it happen. And I don't know you well enough yet, but we'll sit down and talk about how that goes for you guys individually. Because the fact of the matter is this, let me make it smaller. Make it a little smaller. Actually, that's probably fine. Not perfect, but fine. Okay, so when we restart doing meetings and team meetings in this room, right now we're doing them via Zoom on Tuesday mornings, most Tuesday mornings. What'll happen is there'll be a point in time where they'll say, hey, does anybody have a new listing? So they're giving the agents an opportunity to say, yeah, I have a new listing. It's in Palencia. It's listed at 450,000. It's 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 3-car garage. The agent goes through and sort of pitches their listing because it's a new one to the office. And what'll happen is whoever's running the meeting at that time will say, where did you get that listing? And then they'll answer, I got it from Sphere of Influence, or I got it from this or that, or anything else. So this past November, before I went back into being productivity coach, I did a business planning class for our entire office. And I took this picture. It used to be up there. I got to give them a little crap about why they took that away. I'm not sure why they did that. But here where it says Sphere of Influence. So it's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85. And then that's just Sphere of Influence. But then Sphere of Influence to me is also past customer. So 90, 95, 100, 105, 110 of these listings came from Sphere of Influence and past customer. So I look at that as friend, family, past customer is what we're going to build our database on. So 110. These up here that say referral, they're often, or sometimes they're past customer and Sphere of Influence. They're just misdone. Like people say, oh, I got it from, somebody that I'm currently working with, and they'll put it under referral instead of past customer or whatever. But we'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say that there were 15 referrals. Most of the time that referral should be an out-of-market referral or a referral from somebody that's in the referral program here at the office. So like if somebody sent me something from Ocala, I would say referral. For sale by owner, 1. Website, 2. Farm area, 11. Expired, 0. Other, 4. And I sort of know what the other is actually. So if I total these up, that's 110, 125, 26, 27, 28, 39, and 4, 43. So 110 out of 143 were Sphere of Influence during the first 11 months of last year. It's really 10 months, but 10 and change. Why would we do anything other than focus on that? Why would we spend a whole bunch of money on a website if this was the result? Why would we call for sale by owners for 3 hours, 4 days a week from 8 to 11? The reason that's there is nobody wants that. They didn't get into this to do that. They didn't get into this to be a telemarketer. And you can go, there's no other way to explain this other than there's one simple path, and then there's, a little less simple path, which is you spend the majority of your weekends doing open houses, and then it gets unpleasant from there. Hate to sound like Debbie Downer, but it's just sort of just the facts. So that command template is what got me on that tangent. Make sure you download that and start filling it in. And then you should always be ready to be accountable with me. I might sneak up on you. You never know. So that's basically what I wanted to go over today. One other thing that I handed out. I didn't open it in here. And I don't think I'm going to mess with it now, but I'm working on a productivity journal that we're going to start using to track some of this stuff more deeply and use our time wisely. I mean, legitimately, when I show you, this production that mostly Rachel did, because that particular year, I was the productivity coach. So these 38 closings were, I think I did 3 or 4 of them where I was the lead person on 3 or 4 of those. Everything else was my wife. So she did this whole thing, that $10 million in those 38 transactions was probably about 40 to 45 hours a week, not for her and me. That was like us combined. So she probably worked 35 hours a week, and I usually worked 5 or 10 on this on average during a week on that production. And I was the productivity coach doing this stuff instead, just because I love doing it, and now we're able to. So, and that's almost all sphere of influence based. Okay, so we're all done for today, unless anybody has any questions. Wednesday, make sure you show up for Megan's class. It's going to talk to you more about your database. And then Thursday, I think I'm all the way database on that particular day. So let me just review that. Yeah, so database will be 7-9. And then I'll get out the invite for the Peanut Butter Falcon thing, which will be Thursday night. My wife and daughter watched Hamilton at the theater yesterday. So they rented the theater for some other friends, and they watched Hamilton there. And my daughter is a little sketched out, more so than me or my wife from the COVID thing. And she said she was fine. She was like, it was spread out enough. It was nice enough. It wasn't something that she was super worked up about. So I thought that was sort of a good thing to know. And that's why, like, at the capacity, I think it's 50%. It might be 25% capacity at 50 people. And then I'm going to cut that down so it won't be more than 35. So I'll try to make it as safe as I can. I still have the sneaking suspicion that a lot of us are going to catch cooties and don't have any way to make that not happen. Maybe it's a necessity. Maybe that's the way we make it go away. I don't know. But we can absolutely hope for the best. So let me check here. I'm going to try to Zoom everything that I can. I had a question here from Kevin. Some things don't lend themselves very well to Zoom. I mean, here's the thought on the whole thing. And I support anybody who wants to do this stuff via Zoom. There's nothing I can do about the fact that you probably have, like my goal in teaching all this stuff is to get you like 75% all the book knowledge that we can get before the real stuff starts happening. And I can do about 75% of that in class when we're together. And I think that number goes down to about 60 or 50% when you're bored out of your mind doing it on Zoom. But I also understand that it's a necessity for some, absolute necessity, and I support that 100% too. So that would be my thing. This one's being recorded as well, so I can always post it so you guys can see it in the future if needed. So, any other questions? It is. Yeah, it is Excel when you download it. It's the problem's over there. Yeah. So, so he's already laughing because he knows it's coming. But I say this like all the time. Just I haven't, believe it or not, a degree in elementary education, which at first will be stunning. I get that I didn't cuss much today. Didn't get worked up. That's good. But I also have a degree in computer science. So every time I see a Mac, I'm like, oh, that's a nice toy. Because they're just a toy to me. I'm like, how many, yeah, I mean, all I'd say, how many Fortune 500 companies are running those things on their desktop? Not even Apple. They run Unix. So it's a toy. It's a nice toy. I'm glad you like it. It's an expensive toy. Costs 4 times as much, works 1/3 as good. I know I'm picking on Taylor too, probably, right? You got a Mac, Taylor? Nice. Cool. So
yeah, it hasn't been working great. So might be changing that here soon.
I started my insulting for the day, and we'll just see where it grows from there. Have a good one, guys. Thanks for hanging in there.